Okay, we've all heard the phrase Faustian bargain, right? But what if the story you think you know, that complex romantic tragedy, isn't the real story at all? Today, we're stripping all of that away and going back to the source, to the original and, frankly, terrifying 16th century tale that started it all. So let's ask the big question right up front. What does that term really mean? Yeah, we know it's about trading your soul, but what were the original terms and conditions? What was the fine print on that first diabolical contract? To get to the real answer, we have to rewind, way back. We're going to the source code of the legend, a 16th century German book called the Faust book. And look, this isn't just some early draft. This is the critical baseline. It's the foundational story that every other version is built on. All right, first things first, let's dissect the core of the story, the transaction itself. What exactly was on the table in this unholy negotiation? Well, the deal was brutally simple. On one side, Faust gets all these temporary perks, forbidden knowledge, all the earthly pleasures you can imagine, and some serious supernatural powers. But on the other side, the price was eternal, the complete, total, non-negotiable surrender of his soul the second he died. No loopholes, no escape clauses. And this is the part that a 16th century audience would have found absolutely horrifying. The story makes it crystal clear that this was a catastrophic miscalculation. Faust was trading something of infinite, eternal value for things that were, by their very nature, just fleeting and temporary. It was the worst deal in history. Now, here's a really cool way to think about it, and this comes straight from the source material. The bargain is framed as a dangerous, high-interest loan. And Mephistopheles, he's not just some demon. He's the ultimate cynical banker, handing out credit that he knows you can never, ever repay, with your soul as the absolute collateral. So, who is this spiritual banker? Let's take a closer look at the story's antagonist, because in this original version, he was designed to be simple, direct, and just plain evil. Right, so in this first telling, Mephistopheles is not the charming, complex antihero we sometimes see later on. No way. He is a one-dimensional, malevolent villain. He's an unambiguous symbol of evil, and his entire existence is laser-focused on one single goal: getting Faust's soul. That's it. And here's the thing. His simplicity is a feature, not a bug. He's basically an infernal broker, a plot device whose only job is to make the story's moral lesson painfully clear. There's no room for sympathy, no moral gray area. By making the villain pure, concentrated evil, the story forces you to focus entirely on the horror of Faust's choice. Okay, so we've got a simple villain and a straightforward pact. What was this story actually trying to accomplish? Well, it was designed as a powerful piece of moral instruction, a warning. This was never meant to be a deep, psychological drama. The Faust book was written to be a direct and powerful moral allegory. Think of it like a spiritual public service announcement. It had a job to do, to warn its readers in the clearest, most terrifying way possible. And it delivers 3 key warnings. First, it's a huge warning against hubris, that arrogance of wanting to know more than you're meant to. Second, it's a warning against straying from the righteous path. And third, and this one really hits home, it's a warning against the temptation of short-term gratification. Choosing what feels good now over your eternal well-being. And that's exactly why this story has stuck around for so long. It taps into that fundamental human struggle, that constant battle we all face between what we want in the moment versus what's right in the long run. It just blows that conflict up to a cosmic, eternal scale. So, what's the ultimate legacy of this stark, terrifying little book? Well, it's all about the foundation it built for everything that came after. See, the 1587 Faust book laid down this unshakable foundation. Its brutal simplicity and its crystal clear moral lines created the blueprint. This raw, powerful story is what set the stage for a literary evolution, allowing later writers to build their own complex psychological dramas right on top of this original framework. So the big takeaway here is that the original story's power is in its absolute, terrifying clarity. It created the moral bedrock for the entire Faust legend, reminding us that sometimes the most powerful warnings are the ones that leave absolutely no room for doubt. And that leaves us with a pretty interesting question to chew on, doesn't it?
In our world, which is so full of complexity and nuance, what essential and maybe even terrifying truths are hiding in plain sight inside our oldest and simplest cautionary tales?